Hi, I'm Barb Bauer, and today I'm going to demonstrate how I make my Rogue Wave earrings. But first, a little intro about myself and my work. I'm a jewelry artist in Northeast Philadelphia. In my work, I'm inspired by traditional ships, the forms of boats, and the interaction of wind, waves, and water. I am a sailor, and for 12 years of my life, I lived on my boat, traveling and running a small business. I work in traditional jewelry processes using gold and sterling silver, and also in computer-assisted technology such as 3D printing. One of my favorite materials is 3D printed nylon for a number of reasons. The first is that it's semi-porous and dyes beautifully. I really enjoy taking the stark white nylon and bringing the forms to life in colorful gradients. The second thing is that the material can be super light but still sturdy. I'm able to create large, lightweight earrings that make a statement, but weigh hardly anything. You can even forget that you're actually wearing them. Lastly, one of the properties of this material is that in certain forms and thicknesses it is flexible, and I enjoy incorporating that flexibility to create clasps and changing forms. The slight flexibility helps these rippled bangles hold snugly to the wrist. Although my work is designed to be worn, it is important to me that they have a presence as a decorative object as well. This penannular pin can also be worn as a pendant and even pinned into your hair. And now let's find out how I make my Rogue Wave earrings. Even though these are hand-cut sterling silver, it all starts in CAD when I designed these in Rhino. What I want to demonstrate here is how I do the layout for the Rogue Wave earrings. These are cut out of a single piece of sterling silver, 20 gauge, and I solder a post onto the back of one of the little ripples after it's been formed, after it's been cut and formed. These designs actually started out as just an experiment. I was just playing with lines. Sometimes I just doodle, playing with the idea of expanding forms. And you can see that in some of my cascading geometry earrings, the squares, the ovals, and the hexagons that just like they pop out of one another. It's all cut concentrically. What I was trying to do here was I was thinking about, suppose you popped things out in different directions where you had these concentric like U shapes. And so I came up with this idea for earrings with them. They start out small and then they grow a little bit. I called them kind of growing ripples for a while, but I realized that they relate to a nautical idea that is called a rogue wave. These are large, unpredictable waves that happen in the deep ocean, usually taking ships and sailors by surprise. The forms of the earrings also have kind of an element of surprise. So we can see here, like, this is roughly what the saw blade's going to cut. This is a symbol of like where I would drill. And I always drill in the fattest spot of these, and I try to design these openings in such a way that they only get as big as the drill bit and then they get narrow again. So this is why when you're looking at these pieces, it's hard to visualize where the holes were put in order for this to be cut. Once I've finished the design in Rhino, then I will print it out to 1:1 so that I have the same exact measurements as I calculated, and then I'll get it out on paper and glue it to the metal. I use rubber cement to attach the paper design to the metal. I'll coat both sides, let it dry. If I don't like it, I'll take it off, rub it off, reposition, and I'll cut it roughly so that I can handle a smaller piece of metal as I set up the drilling process. So I just need something easy to handle. One of the most important things in using these tiny little drill bits is making sure that they're centered properly, so I usually use a mirror. Then you have to be really careful with drilling the holes. I lubricate in between every drill, and each time I'll bring up the drill bit several times in order to make sure that it doesn't overheat and break. For each drill hole that I have to do, I'll lubricate it with the Burr Life, usually in a little cap, and then I have to line up the drill bit. These are real precise, so I have to be exactly where I want them. Before I turn on the drill is when I line up the bit into where I want it to drill, then I'll drill just a little bit more, let it cool off, lift it up, and then when I feel it go through, I'll stop. Lubricate again, on to the next hole. This piece has, I think, 46 or 48 holes. So as you can imagine, I spend quite a bit of time at the drill. I don't want to bore you by having you watch the entire thing, but this is just a few of the holes that I had to drill for this earring. This is the most time-consuming part of the creation of these pieces. This is where I actually saw out the patterns. I use 8/0 saw blades. They are 0.0063 inches wide. They're very tiny. They're the finest saw blades that I can get, and I feed them through the drill holes that I just did, and then I cut around to each end of the pattern, meanwhile cutting out the full spot around the where the drill bit has been done. The very first hole, though, is a little round one, so that's not too hard. But most of the sawing is a lot of taking the saw blade and feeding it through, pulling it out again, feeding it through. I go through a lot of saw blades. I buy these by the gross. Here's a little closer look at the sawing. You can see this is also actual speed. It can be kind of deceptive when you look at all the sped up ones. I mean, some of my pieces take me multiple hours to cut out, and that's just one part of the process that's taken to create these. But you can see I get to the end of the line, and then I'll pull the blade out. Then we have to reconfigure which is the next hole, and then feed the saw blade through, reattach it into the saw frame, and then start sawing again. Sometimes I have to like really figure out where I'm at, especially in these pieces that have many holes. There we go. You see how and you can get a good feel for how big the blades actually are in this photo, in this view. So you can see here that, I always start at the round part and then narrow it out as I get to the end. Then I go back to the hole and then widen out the area near the hole. And in a way, that's just to hide the hole, from the eye when you're looking at it. I don't have any way of actually sanding and making all these edges smooth. So I try to be real regular with the saw blade, and they have this nice little sawn texture on the edges of the piece. I consider this little texture on the edges as one of the signatures of my work. It also indicates that these pieces were cut by hand. So the last stage in sawing is after all the interior cuts have been made, then I'll finish out the outline and cut all around the perimeter of the piece. So then the very last thing after I cut and before I start forming, or actually I do a little sanding to the surface first to get rid of any burrs from the drilling, is I do this crazy thing where I like to take the paper pattern off, and I save the paper pattern. I have piles and piles of these crazy little paper patterns that are these fine little historical moments of the creation of my work. And I don't know, maybe someday I'll do something with them, or maybe not, but it's a really fun little pile to look at. So the last thing I'll do is I'll take a real good look at the lines and make sure that the openings are smoothly tapered on each edge, and I'll make sure that I haven't missed anything, because once I start to form this, I'm not going to be able to go back in with the saw and do anything. This is the point where I have to make sure the cut is as perfect as I want it. Then comes the moment that we've been building up to this whole process. This is where we start to pop the form out of the sheet using Delrin plastic tools that I've made, my fingers, the bench pin. I like these earrings to be book matched, which means that they're a mirror of one another. So I need to pick up the other earring and make sure that they relate and that they are the same pattern just on either side. Um, of course, they're not going to be perfectly exact because they've been hand cut. They're being hand formed and refined into these really unique earrings. And of course, this process takes some time too. So here's a time lapse of me finishing up the other half of this pair of Rogue Wave earrings. I'm constantly checking the corresponding ripple on the other side earring until they are finished. So the last step after forming is to solder on the earring post and tumble polish them for hardness and durability. The Rogue Wave earrings are featured on Craft Boston Holiday Online 2020, and you can find more of my work at fairwindsjewelry.com. Thanks for watching.